Welcome to the Executive Actions Podcast. This is one way the President of the United States manages the operations of the executive branch. Technically, there are three types of executive actions. Each has different authority and effects, with executive orders holding the most prestige. I'm now going to break down the three main executive actions. First are proclamations. These are often statements. Most are ceremonial observances of federal holidays or awareness months. However, perhaps the most famous one was President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. This one carried more weight than others, but again, because it was a proclamation, Lincoln's freeing of the slaves didn't actually have the force of law. Second are presidential memoranda. Memoranda are used to delegate tasks and reports assigned by Congress to the President. They can start a regulatory process or direct a specific department or agency to do something. They are often designed to persuade, not direct. They can have the force of law depending on certain factors. Executive orders, on the other hand, are similar to laws passed by Congress. They are meant to have the force of law. They typically direct members of the executive branch to follow a new policy or directive. The Constitution has been interpreted to allow this presidential power based on Article 2 of the Constitution. This article gives the president broad authority to determine how to enforce the law or to otherwise manage the resources and staff of the executive branch. The ability to make such orders is also based on expressed or implied acts of Congress that delegate or give to the president some degree of power to use in a way he feels appropriate. In this political cartoon, President Obama is literally shredding the Constitution. The cartoonist above most likely thinks that his executive orders have hurt or violated the Constitution. Some executive orders are controversial and met with heated debate, and others not so much. Because executive orders have the force of law, people can sometimes see it as going against checks and balances. Though, again, technically, the president is just clarifying something to be done or directing how a law that has already passed is implemented. And implementation is a role of the executive branch. Executive actions can be, and often are, repealed. A new president can simply issue a new executive order or memorandum that withdraws or replaces a previous one. Congress can also legislate to overturn an executive order or refuse to fund an executive action that requires funding. Trump has sought to change what he and many Republicans regarded as executive overreach, power going too far, by the Obama administration, so replacing or getting rid of dozens of actions put in place by Obama. These involve weakening of environmental protections for drilling for oil on public lands and the very controversial decision to overturn an already controversial program called DACA that allows for young adults who came to the U.S. illegally as children some ability to stay and work legally in the U.S. Scholars have typically used the number of executive orders per term to measure how much a president has exercised their power. George Washington signed 8 in his entire time in office, while FDR signed more than 3,700. In his 2 terms, Barack Obama issued 277 executive orders, a total number on par with the other modern presidents, but the lowest per year average, 35 in 120 years. Trump signed 32 executive orders in the first 100 days. According to the Federal Register, the official publication from the U.S. government, as of September 16, 2018, Trump has thus far signed 84 executive orders. President Trump is on track to sign more executive orders than previous presidents. As you can see, he has signed many more in the first 200 days than his predecessors, those who came before him. Does that mean he's using his powers more assertively? It's up to you to determine what that means. Here are some data on when President Obama signed executive orders. Notice that he signed the most in the beginning of his presidency, but continued to issue them throughout, depending on what policy issues were being discussed at the time. He may not have signed a ton of executive orders, but a few of them, including giving temporary legal status to some illegal immigrants, were definitely controversial. This is what the historical average per day has been over many of the last presidents. As the data before suggests, President Trump will have signed more per day than Obama and Bush II. Think about what this may suggest. I mentioned some of the executive actions President Trump had taken regarding environmental regulations and immigration. Here are some other actions President Trump signed. He froze government hiring and later decided to also put a federal pay freeze in place. Also, he reinstated a policy that requires foreign non-governmental organizations receiving U.S. assistance financially to not use their own funds for abortion services or anything to do with abortion. Putting this order in place, known as the Mexico City policy, or getting rid of it, has traditionally been one of the first executive orders that a president gives if he assumes office after somebody from a different party. Another action President Trump took was to withdraw the U.S. from a large trade deal called the Trans-Pacific Partnership, something the Obama administration worked very hard to create. But things like this always happen when one party takes over from another. It's been a bit bigger of a change as the country becomes more politically and ideologically divided, though. For those of you who are interested in looking at all of President Trump's executive actions, Wikipedia actually has a nice list with brief summaries of each on its page entitled List of Executive Actions by Donald Trump, for those of you who are interested, of course. I'm not technologically savvy enough to place a link in the video, otherwise I would, because that would be really cool. Executive orders occur throughout the presidency, as I mentioned. As of September 12, 2018, President Trump's most recent executive order is targeting election meddling. This executive order authorizes U.S. sanctions on any foreign individual or country that tries to interfere in U.S. elections. John Bolton, Trump's national security advisor, stated, "This is intended to be a very broad effort to prevent foreign manipulation of the political process." A few weeks ago, Dan Coats, Trump's director of national intelligence, warned of a pervasive messaging campaign by Russia to try to weaken and divide the United States before Americans go to the polls in November. Congress is also considering similar bills with support from both Democrats and Republicans. So I wonder, is this going to be a controversial executive order or not? There you have it, executive actions. It's up to you to decide if you agree with them and if a president is overstepping his bounds when he issues them, or if he's just clarifying the Constitution. It's often a political debate and one that will not end anytime soon, no matter who becomes president and which party he or she might belong to.